Hey everybody, what's happening? So today we're going to continue on the path of using planar tracking in Blender. But with this tutorial, we're going to learn a different method, which is using clean plates. And clean plates are basically used to either remove something, replace something, or add something to your scene. So let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open Blender. No, we don't need to delete the default cube because we're not even going to work in the layout tab. We are going to go to video editing, then we are going to push Shift A. We're going to add in our movie clip, and then in order to make a clean plate, you typically want to take the very first frame of the footage you're using for the object that you want to remove. So for me, I want to remove this clock because I feel like it takes the viewer's eye away from where I want them to look, which is going to be down this hallway as we pan around with the camera. I feel like the clock is too distracting. So I want to render out the first frame as an image. So I shot this at 3840 by 2160. So I want to make sure that the resolution reflects that. My frame rate is correct. Like I said, so I want to start at frame 1 and I want to end at frame 1 because I only want to render out one frame, the first frame. And then I want to select where I want to save that frame 1 render. And then I want to save it as a PNG because it's lossless. I don't need an alpha channel, so I'm just going to select RGB. And that's pretty much it on this side. So as you can see, I changed the 3840 by 2160, which pretty much changed the canvas. But my footage is still at 1920 by 1080. In order to fix that, you just go down to your footage, right click, movie strip, and set render size, and then it'll fix it. So now we just go up here, click render, and render animation, and now it rendered the first frame of our scene. So now I'm done with this. I like to go to File, New, General. So now, before we start in Blender, I'm going to create my clean plate. I am going to use Photoshop. Obviously, if you want to stay in the free realm, you could download Gimp and use Gimp to edit your picture. I like to use Photoshop just because it makes it severely easy on me and it's very fast for my workflow. So here we have our frame 1 of our footage. Again, all I want to do is remove this clock. Obviously in things like Gimp and stuff, you could use the clone tool to kind of clone the other areas to kind of paint over and replace the clock with the background. But in Photoshop, all you have to do is click the rectangular marquee tool, select an area over your clock here, make sure that the clock is fully within the bounds, and then generative fill. You don't need to type anything in here, generate. Let it load for a couple seconds, and then it'll give you 3 options over here that you can choose from, which will create different backgrounds a little bit. This one already looks great, but let's see what the other ones look like. That one looks great, gives you a little more variation there. This one I feel is a little bit better. I don't kind of like where there's no seam there, but I think I'm going to go with this one. I like this one the most. You could also push generate again. It'll give you 3 more options while still allowing you to pick the original 3 it came up with. So let's see if these next 3 are any better. That one's a little washed out. I don't like that one. This one's pretty good. I like this one. And this one's pretty good. But let's just go with this one since it's the last one I picked and I don't mind it. So now we're pretty much done with our clean plate. This is what this wall will look like throughout your entire footage now once we track everything and add it in and mask it out to do that. The amazing thing about clean plates is you could save this one. You can make another one by adding like a poster here or a different clock. Maybe I'm pretending this is like a horror footage, that maybe there's a monster at the end of the hall or something, so maybe you might want to add like a blood splatter here. You could do that as well. But you could render out several different clean plates all with this first frame and then replace the clean plate each time to see what how it changes the mood and feel of your footage just by changing one thing in your node setup. And I'll show you how to do that towards the end of the footage. But I like this one, so I'm going to render this, or I'm going to save this one out. Export as. I'm going to leave it as a PNG because, again, I like that PNG is lossless. I don't need transparency. Just make sure that all your resolutions match. Export to where you want it to be. So now we're done in Photoshop. We don't use Photoshop anymore unless you want to make more clean plates to replace with different scenarios. So now we're back in Blender. So now we're going to go up to VFX, motion tracking, and now we are going to open our footage here. We got to go back to where our footage file is located. Okay, and then we kind of need to make sure that all of our settings are correct again. So we're going to go back up here and start from the top. I like to work in cycles, GPU, color management. So Blender always makes our view transform AGX by standard, which is a little bit more for CGI type stuff. So we want to change it to standard. So that's really all we have to do in here. You can mix around with the samples and stuff of your viewport and your rendered stuff like that. I'm not really going to. It hasn't really seemed to affect me lately. So I'm going to leave them the way they are. Most people will reduce their viewport samples to make everything run a little bit more smoothly. I'm just going to keep them the way they are. So now we're going to go over here, make sure that our resolutions and everything match our footage. So I'm going to go to 3840 by 2160. I remember I filmed this at 29.97. We don't need to worry about the frame range right now because we're going to let Blender do that for us. And I'll show you that in just a minute. But then we're going to go to where we want to save our final render after we're all done with everything. So I'm going to go to where I want to save that. We're going to switch this to an FFmpeg video, and we're going to change this to MPEG-4, and then medium quality is going to go to high quality. So now we're done on this whole side. We don't need to change anything else. So then we're going to move over here. We're going to go to track. We're going to go to camera, and luckily my camera is already preloaded into the Blender presets. I use a Canon EOS R7. Which is going to be an APS-C sensor for Canon. And then I'm going to go to lens, and I shot this at 28mm focal length, so I'm going to add that there. So now we're all done on this side. So now we need to hop over here to the left. We're going to set scene frames, and this is kind of where I told you don't need to worry about this yet because Blender's going to do it for us. So you can see it's set to 1 and then 250 for the end. You can also see it down here at the bottom. So if I put set scene frames, you could see that it changed to 407 down here, 407 down here. That's basically saying that there are 407 frames in this footage at 29.97 frames per second. And then we are going to select prefetch, which is going to load this bluish purple bar, which is basically rendering our footage into our RAM so that we could scroll through it fast and seamlessly. And as we move down, we don't really need to change our pattern sizes. The motion model, I'm going to stay at location. I don't move around very much in this. I move around a little bit very slowly. That's basically what this is for. Match, I'm going to do previous frame. And then I'm going to checkbox the normalize, which normalize is basically affects the lighting in your scene. It reduces the impact of the lighting in your scene so that your tracks can stay more accurate. So say a flashlight passes across one of your tracks. If you didn't have normalize checked, it might throw your track off and you'd have a bad track. So as we go down further, we're going to go to track settings extra. Correlation we're going to set to 0.9. This is just telling our tracks to make sure that they are 90% sure that they are in the same location as the previous frame. So now we are ready to add our track markers. So we are going to kind of zoom into our footage here. And I want my plane track to pretty much just be around this clock. So I'm going to set my track markers pretty much the same way. You don't completely have to do this, but you do want to stay very close to this. So I'm going to try and go, these look all right. These aren't as contrasty as you want them to be, but these should do fine for this. So I'm going to select that guy. I'm going to try and keep in line here. Maybe select this corner here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to come back down, maybe select, I'm going to select this guy here. And then I'm going to shoot across over here. Maybe I'll select this guy here. And obviously, you could go more contrasty. We could select that guy, that guy, that guy. You know, the end of this one. You want your tracks to be on high contrast areas, and obviously there's a million of them here. This is a white wall with a bunch of black or dark brown trackers, so this is great contrast. These trackers, any of these should work out great, but we're going to try these ones. So now we want to push A, make sure that they're all highlighted. It means you have them all selected, and then we're going to push Control T to track all the way forward. If you can't remember that, or you don't know that right now, you could also go down here. This track marker will select the track markers forward by 1 frame. This one will track the markers by the entire clip, which is what we just did with Control T. This one will track the selected markers backwards by the entire clip, which I believe is Control Shift T to track backwards. And then this one will track the selected markers backwards by 1 frame. So these all tracked all the way through. They look pretty good. They got a little wonky here. So we'll double press A to deselect all, and we'll kind of select one of them. Got a little blurry there, so we'll see how it does. But as you kind of scroll through, it looks like it stayed pretty good. It looks like it got a little wonky, but for the most part, it did a pretty good job for not really having much to go off of there. So we're just going to kind of scrub through all of them, kind of see how they did. That one looks like it did fairly well also. Select this one. Also looks like it did fairly well. This one. Great. They all look like they did fairly well, but let's also test by now creating our plane track. So we don't really need to mess with any of the solve information here because we're not solving anything. We're not doing a 3D track. We're just doing a plane track. So we're going to go down here. We're going to create a plane track. One thing I should note that is with plane tracks, you only need 4 markers in your scene. 3D tracking, you need at least 8. Typically, you want a lot more than that to help you out. But with plane tracking, you only need 4. So that it makes it much easier and faster for your workflow to create just a plane track if you only need 2. So now we're going to create the plane track. So actually you want to make sure that you have them all selected. See how they're all kind of faded out. So if you push A, you got them all selected. They're all bright yellow now. So now we create the plane track, and there it is. But our plane track is looking pretty good. Looks like it's staying in line to where it's supposed to be. It's not moving around too much. It looks like a pretty solid track. And it's moving with the wall. You can see it's deforming and turning with the wall, so that looks good to me. So we're not completely done in the motion tracking tab yet. We are going to transfer over to the compositing tab, but I'll show you why we will have to come back to the motion tracking tab in a little bit. So let's go over to compositing. We're going to select the use nodes. We do not need the render layers node, so we're going to shift A. Search for our movie clip node. We're going to select our movie clip. You can see it creates a little image showing that you have your movie clip selected. And we're going to go to image. And this is where we will load in our clean plate. And then you can see you have our little clean plate image with the clock removed. So in order to combine these, we need to do an alpha over node. And then we are going to plug in our footage to the top slot here, and then our clean plate to the bottom slot here. And this is basically just saying that you got to look at it as layers, right? So we're laying down our movie clip first in the first slot, and then we are going to overlay our clean plate second on top of our footage. And then if we connect this to our composite, you'll see that nothing happens because our composite node is strictly for rendering. We have not rendered anything, so we do not see anything. But we want to see a preview. We don't want to render anything yet because we're not done, right? So we just want to see a preview. So what we want to do is go up to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and search for Node Wrangler. And you want to make sure that this is checked. And as long as it's checked, you go down, Save Preferences, exit out here. Now if you push Control Shift and click, yay, we get this viewer node pops up and we see our footage. We're zoomed in a little too close here, so if you press V, you can zoom out and see our whole footage. So now, as you can see, all we are seeing is our clean plate, because that is what's overlaid on top of all of our footage. So no matter where we go in our footage, all we see is the frame one of our clean plate. As you can see, it kind of updates up here in the little thing, little previewer there. So we want to make it so that our clean plate one moves with our planar track. So it shifts and forms with our planar track. And two, we want to create a mask so that it's not overlaid across our entire footage, but just over the area we want to remove. So basically we want to create a mask in this area here so that all we see is that the clock is removed and the remainder of it is showing our footage underneath. So let's go back to motion tracking, and then we will go to masking now. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. We need to go back to compositing, and in order to make our clean plate move with our planar track, we need to create a plane track deform node, and then we will select our footage in the top drop down, our camera in the second, and then our plane track there. So now you can see it's squished and compressed into the boundaries of our planar track, and that's still not exactly what we want. So we are going to go back to our motion tracking. We are going to scale this up so that our clean plate covers the entire footage again. We want it to be the same resolution and cover our entire footage. So we are going to make these to the outer bounds, and you want to make these as close as possible. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we want to test it, check it out. So now you see that our plane track is still moving with our wall. Basically, it's turning and shifting with our footage. The wall's turning and shifting, so is our planar track. So that's exactly what we want to see, is that everything's still moving greatly. So if we go back to compositing, so now if we go back to beginning, so now we see that it covers the entire footage on frame one, because that's what we used the clean plate for, was frame one, so it matches perfectly. As we go through, it's going to deform with our planar track, and you can see it start doing that up here. It's deforming, but our wall is still in the same location as it should be. So now is where we want to start the masking, so that we get rid of all this ugly seams and just see the wall without the clock on it. So we're going to go back to frame one, go back to motion tracking, and the masking is basically the same tool set as the tracking. So we're going to go tracking, mask, but first you have to go up to the top and create a new mask. So I'm going to name this clock mask. And now if you control click, you create a mask marker. I put mine here because I like to put my masks along seams so that it hides the border of the mask. So sometimes masks will create a like a little seam, a little border, a little edge on the mask, and you can get rid of those by feathering them, blurring them, but I like to take that extra step and hide them further in seams if I can. This one obviously has a lot of seams, so I am going to use them to my advantage and hide the mask in them. So I'm going to follow along here. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to follow this seam up. I'm going to go all the way to, let's say, here. And then I'm going to follow this seam back to here, down to there, and then down to here. So now I followed the seams. I completely contained the clock within the bounds of the mask. So now I don't have to do anything else inside of motion tracking. I don't have to track it again, nothing like that. So I go to compositing. I go to Shift A, search for mask. I'm going to click that down here. You want to select your mask, and then I'm going to search for set alpha because this is an alpha mask. So I'm going to alpha mask the clean plate. So set the clean plate into the image and then the mask into the alpha. And you want to put this before the plane track deform node, because anything before the plane track deform node will be tracked with the plane track, right? If you put it after, it wouldn't follow the plane track. You want to put it before, because all this data will now be tracked through the plane track deform, and it'll move and form with it. So now, move all this stuff out of the way. And now we will see that if we scroll through here, we don't get the seam anymore. It doesn't you don't see the entire image because it's all now within the mask. So now we're pretty much done. You remove the clock. It's not in any of your footage anymore. You can't tell that a clock was ever even there. So now you could be completely done. But like I said, with clean plates, you have so many opportunities to make your footage the way you want it to be by creating multiple different clean plates with different objects either removed, added, or replaced. So for me, this is a horror movie, so I might want to add a blood splatter here. Like I said, the clock was taking my eye away from where I really wanted the viewers to look, so I removed that. And now maybe I want it to be a little more eerie or scary, since I think this is too blank now. Like, you know, maybe there should be something there, but I don't want that clock. Maybe I want a blood splatter. So now all I have to do is, one, you do have to make another clean plate inside of Photoshop or Gimp or something like that. But now in here, all you have to do now is go to that new clean plate that you made, add it in here. So we do have to adjust our mask, which is fine. That's easy. Then you just go to motion tracking. See how it kind of cut it out. My blood splat was right here, cut it off with the mask. So now we just lower the mask. Go back to compositing, reload it by just going back. There's my blood splatter. And look, it tracks completely with the footage. And that was all just by adjusting the mask and changing the clean plate. There's endless possibilities and creativity you could do with clean plates. And it makes your workflow so fast to change and create a different feel for your footage. But that's basically it. So let's render these out, see what they look like. And that's it for this tutorial. Thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate you being here. I hope to see you in the next one. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know what else you would like to see, what the next tutorial should be. Thank you everybody.